Amud Aleph. We are up to Tanur. Yeah. Ovid Kechavim, Hahilich Liyarid. I just wanted to, before we go weiter, I just wanted to look at one quick Tosfos that we didn't do in the morning, that I forgot to do in the morning, on Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, and it talks a little bit about what you're allowed to buy from a goy and what not. I doubt it applies to today, but it's still an interesting to note. Because yesterday, we actually learned it on Shabbos. We learned about buying challah de shichra. You're allowed to buy vinegar, oil, beer vinegar from a goy if it's out of a barrel that's for storage. Because if you were buying it fresh to drink, he'll mix in some shmorim of yayin nesach or of yayin stam, because he wants to reduce the amount of shecher challah that he's giving you. But if it's being put into storage, he knows that it'll ruin his barrel, it'll ruin the contents, it'll ruin the shecher with those shmorim, so he won't put it in. So based on that, Tosfos tells us, again, it's the second Tosfos from the top of Amud Beis Amud Aleph, you're allowed to buy any other beverage from a goy, such as apple juice. Meitusim is like strawberry juice. As long as the Yisrael sees the goy take these juices right out of the barrel, even if these juices are worth more money than the wine, so now you need to be concerned that maybe he diluted the juice with wine so that he can give you less juice. That's not something that you don't need to worry about. For sure, the main barrel that stores the bulk apple juice, the goy would never mix any wine into it to save money. The mishrak asari, because ultimately it will ruin it. If he's serving you a glass, he might mix in. But if you see him taking it straight out of his barrel, then you know he didn't mix anything into it. But if you didn't see him taking what he's selling you directly out of his barrel, then it depends. If you're buying a juice from him that costs more than wine, yes, sir, because we're afraid he diluted it with wine. To make more money with a Avo im hayayin yokar, but if wine is more expensive than the beverage that he's selling you, ein lochul shema iriv bayayin, you don't have to be worried that the guy mixed in wine lahachshil, just bedavke to be machshel you with an avera. Come on. That was the point that I wanted to bring up from places. Now nowadays, I'm not sure how that works, because even in the barrel, who knows what additives could be there that won't be kosher. Because today's Rabbanim who give Kashering have to be more college educated than learned in Torah, because they have to know the chemistry. They have to be chemical engineers. That's a big component of knowing what the ingredients even are. Okay, Zok to Gemara Vayter. We are now on Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines in the top, Tanur Rabbanim. Ovid Kechavim Hahilich Liyarid. And the Ovid Kechavim who's on the way to a Yerid. A Yerid is, Rashi says, a Yerid is Shuk Shalabais Kechavim. It's a big marketplace where goyim go. Miu Ovid Kechavim ki azul l'schayr huda. So it's a big sale that is avodah zarah oriented. It's like a marketplace, but a market like a fair for avodah zarah. So a Ovid Kechavim hahilich liyarid bein be'alicha bein bechazara muter. Whatever he has with him on the way down, on the way up, you can do business with him. But Yisrael lahilich liyarid, if you see a yid going to a yerid, ba'alicha muter. On the way there, it's muter, because whatever he has, and the money that he has, and the items that he has are Yiddish items. You don't need to worry there's avodah zarah mixed to it. But b'chazara, on his way home, usher, because you have to be afraid that the yid sold something l'avodah zarah, and he got money from avodah zarah back, and the cash that he has now is for avodah zarah. Look at Rashi says. Rashi says, "Ovid kechavim mizovin." No, that's fighter. So, fact the more, Maishno Yisrael. Why is it that if a yid on the way back, the Bechazar Aser, why the Amri avoided kechavim mizovin, and therefore the may avoided kechavim ikabiyat behede. The money that he has with him is money that he received for selling getchkes. As Rashi avoided kechavim mizovin machar klon b'shup. He sold the cross and mitayashke, right? He probably sold them some type of item that was Avodah Zara. So he's getting paid for Avodah Zara. So his money is the proceeds of Avodah Zara. Therefore, you're not allowed to do business with him. But Ovid Kechavim Nami, Nema Avodah Kechavim Zovim. Maybe the guy going to the Yerid also sold a Pokras's mitayashke, right? So Zok Gemara. And therefore, the me'avoid kachavim ikabadei. So how could you buy from the guy when he's on the way back from the Yerid? Ela ovid kachavim amrinon glimazavim. You know what the guy sold in this big marketplace for Avodah Zarah? He sold generic items like clothing, chamerzavim, like wine. So for Gemara, so why don't you say that Yisrael did the same thing? Yisrael nami nema emer glimazavim. Ema Chamers oven, or Amers Glimas oven, Chamers oven. Zok the Gemara, Imisa the Havale, if a Yid had begotten to sell, or had wine to sell, why would he schlep so far and go to a Goyish Yerid, a Yerid of Avodah Zara? He could have sold it right over here. He could have sold it right here by the Eden. The only product that he can sell by the Eden, the only place where he can make money, is by the Goyim. That only product is Avodah Zarah. So that means the
price because they said they pay retail.
I'm sorry. I thought the speaker was off. So I thought the speaker was off. So I tried turning it on. Meanwhile, it was on. I turned it off. Give me 1 second. And now it will go on. Second. About that, I turned the speaker off. Can you say that again?
So maybe he can get a better price because they pay retail.
That's another reason. So maybe he sold begodim, but he assumed he would get a better price. I hear, but I guess whatever price he was going to get there for the begodim, he thought he would have been able to get from the Eden, but there wouldn't be much of a market for Eden to buy getchkes. Okay, Zok Tehel Gemara, the Haboin Mutarin. We said those goyim that are coming back from the what was the name of that the Tarfus, those guys that are coming back, it's mutter to do business with them because if they do a good deal, they're not going to turn back and run to give shvach voidah to the getchka. If an individual guy is coming away on his way back from this Tarfus, that's when you could do business with him because he won't run back to be murdered to his Avodah Zarah about the great deal that he did with you. If the goyim are traveling in a group together, then asurin. You know why? Because the Gemara is telling us when they travel in groups, so they're mechazik each other probably. So when they do a good deal, the group will say, "Kum lomet teriking to the getchke to be murdered to him." A guy by himself, he won't want to be bothered because he doesn't want to go home. But if he's with a group, he is likely to go back and be murdered to the getchke. And therefore, even on his way home, as part of a group, you don't want to sell anything to him. Noidos are flasks that are made out of leather. Kankanim are made out of cheres. And the Mishnah says, Rabbi Meir holds their contents are asur bano, and the Chum says it's only asur b'chila. That's what our Mishnah says. Tanu Rabbanon, noidos ha'ovdei kechavim. I also want to point out a very important long toisus over here that's relevant to the Gemara we learned yesterday. If you look at the bottom of Lamed Beis, is a massive, massive toisus, and what toisus is referring to is the Mishnah is the Gemara that we're about to learn. But toisus comments on it on Lamed Beis and Beis. So let's first learn the Gemara, and then we'll speak out toisus. some of the main proofs of Tosfos. Taner about it. Noidois ha'oivdik achavim, gerudim chadoshim utorim, yishonim umuzufafin asurim. You have these flasks. They're made out of leather. Gerudim means they're scraped off, meaning they don't have a lining. Normally, they would be lined with wax or some type of sealant. Now, if it was brand new and it didn't have any of this liner, then chadoshim, if it's new, mutarin, they would be mutar. Why? Chadoshim, Rashi teaches here that even if a guy put wine into it, but it's not old, maybe put wine into it once or twice, so there we'll say that the new leather did not absorb any of the wine, and therefore the Yid can use it for his wine. Let's see Rashi. Noidoi shal or and kankanim shal cheres kol hamishna pirashti l'mayla. I explained it earlier. Grudim garish bedalad. Rashi she'ein ban zephes. There's no zephes is tar or wax. Shiva is wax. So zephes is like a tar type of thing. Then chadoshim, and they're new, mutar and they're mutar. The beknisas yain zman muet loy bala. A little bit of wine that was in it for a little bit of time. By the goy, the or would not have absorbed, and therefore you're allowed to use it for your wine. The loyd is dafka. It's dafka noydis that we're talking about. Avachlicheres bala altar will be by layer right away, which means kankanim, which are made out of cheres. Rashi just told us, even if it's new, but if there's a chance that a goy even put wine into it once, we'll say the walls are by layer. So Rashi is making a distinction between something made out of cheres that will be by layer right away versus something made out of leather, which the first time you put something into it, it won't be by layer until it's used heavily. If it's yishanim, if it's an old noit, or it's mizufafin, even though it's new, that will be asurin. Why? Yishenim will be asur. ID dekanis behen yayin esech zman meruba bala'ar. If it's an older noit, which the guy had been storing wine in for a long time, it's not new. So it's possible that he used it for a long time. We need to be concerned that the leather itself absorbed the flavor of the wine, which will then asher your wine. Mizufafin, even though it's new, has the same concern. Afilu bechada zimna bala zefes liyayin. Zefes is much more absorbent. So even if you use it only once, so even if it's new, it's still going to absorb wine, and that will now asher any wine that you're going to put into it. That is how Rashi learns this sugya. The Gemara goes on. Tosfos is going to argue. One of the reasons why Tosfos argues is because if you read the Mishnah, it's very much mashma that noidos and kankanim have the same halacha. Rashi clearly stating that they have a different halacha. Rashi clearly states that kankanim are going to absorb even when they're brand new, and they would have a different rule. So because of that, Tosfos doesn't like Rashi pshat. But let's just see the next line. Noidos ha'oivdik achavim grudim chadoshim are mutarim, yishanim umuzufafin asurin. Oivek echavim rivavon v'ivdan. If a goy was the one who, Rivavon Rashi says, Koloimar, I saw it here a second ago. Rivavon, Bereish, Kamoy Revav, Koloimar hitech hazefes l'soichon. The goy dripped fresh zefes into it. So basically, he's just finishing off making this pouch, and the final thing he does before he's ready to use it is he drips the zephes into it, that sort of liner, he drips it around. And then v'nosan l'soichan yayin, and he put wine into it. And Rashi explains the way they did it is while the zephes was still hot and soft, they poured wine into it right away so that the wine should be absorbed into this liner of zephes. That took the bad taste away from the zephes. If the warm zephes quickly absorbed the wine, now that zephes would sort of not put a bad taste into more wine that you would put into this noid. So the Yisrael Omer al Gabo, a Yid is supervising the guy putting the wine into this warm zephes. Einoi Choshesh, you don't need to be worried because of Stam Yain, it was supervised by the Yid. If the guy is pouring the wine, how will the Yisrael supervising change anything? The guy is pouring it, all it means is the Yid watched the guy pour it L'Shem Avodah Zara, but a guy pours L'Shem Avodah Zara, so it should be also. Amar Papa Hachik Amar. Oivet Kechavim, Rivivan, the Ivdan, but the Yisrael Noisen L'Sechem Yain. If it was the Yisrael who did the pouring of the wine, there, if it's Yisrael Acher Omer Al Gabav, if it's even this Yid who's doing the pouring has a Meshkiach, there the Einei Choshesh. If a Yid's pouring the wine, surely he's not pouring it L'Avodah Zara. Why would he need a Meshkiach? Yisrael Noisen L'Sechem Yain. Yisrael Acher Omer Al Gabav Lamali. But Gemara, you know why you need a Mashiach there? Because when the Yid's pouring the wine in, really what he's sort of doing is he's curing the Zephes so that the Zephes shouldn't put a bad taste into future contents of this night. But we're afraid the Yid's focused. The Yid's focused on pouring that wine in properly. Dilma agav tirde minasech v'lavadete. Maybe while the Yid is focused on pouring the wine in to do this curing process, maybe the guy dropped some of his own wine in there, and since the Yid is in the middle of a critical step of the manufacturing, he won't notice a little drop of wine that the guy might drip in, L'Shem Avodah Zara, and that's why you need a Yisrael, a second Yid watching, who's not doing anything, he's just watching to make sure that that does not happen. That is the first shot. So the Yid's pouring the wine, we're concerned that the guy will drip some wine in while the Yid's focused on doing his job, and therefore we need another Yid to watch. Rabbi Zvid said, no, it's the guy pouring the wine. You asked Akash, if the guy is pouring the wine, what does it help if the Yid's watching? The guy is going to pour it Avodah Zara. That first bit of wine that we said is designed to take away the bad smell from this Zephes, that gets so absorbed into the Zephes, it disintegrates. It becomes ice wine. I guess there's a chemical reaction with the Zephes, which is how it neutralizes that bad taste that the Zephes has, but there's no wine anymore. It becomes totally consumed by the Zephes. And therefore, there is no wine, there's no yain esach anymore. It's as if it's not there anymore. As Rashi says, Mayim Latit, Sha'isa yain hoylech li'ibud. That wine goes li'ibud. Why? Bezephes, inside the Zephes, ubotol taimai. It becomes bottled while it gets absorbed into the Zephes. Kemai manitnin betit. If you pour water onto sand, it gets absorbed in the sand and it evaporates, it's gone. Shakolin me'elein, they totally disintegrate. Kishem yabesh, kishem misyabesh, when the tit dries up. Harain kilo hoyut, as if they're not there at all. Af yain zeh, kolo belichluchis hazefes, it becomes totally disintegrated, decomposed when it goes into the zefes. Ucheshem misyabesh hazefes, and when it cools off and dries off, kolo me'elov, it's as if there's no wine left. V'shuvei ne'poilate, and therefore there's nothing for it to be poilate into future wine that the Yid might store in it. Omar Papi, so are you telling me, Shemami Nami di Rab Zvid, Hayovet Gechavim the Shad Chamer Levei Milchi di Yisrael. Sorry, if a Yisrael has a sack of salt and the goy pours wine into the salt, you can tell me that's going to be mutter because it disintegrates in the salt? Zok to Gemara, of course not. You can't compare pouring the wine into the zephes to pouring wine into salt. When you pour it into the zephes, the taka is gone. When you pour it into salt, that salt will have a taste of wine in it, and therefore the salt will be usher. So you can't compare this specific chemical reaction when they're pouring the first little bit of wine into the zephes. You can't compare that to pouring wine into salt. Okay, so Rashi's distinction between the kankan and the noid, even though Tosfos has a little shver to make any distinction at all, because it's mashma from the Mishnah, Noidos Ha'oivdik Chav Mekan Kaneim, it's almost much like they're the same. And we're going to have later on very shortly a bride that talks about the same type of scenario. It seems to say that they're the same, and therefore Tosha doesn't like Rashi, but Rashi doesn't make that distinction that Tankanim, even when they're brand new, will right away absorb a lot of wine, and therefore they will become usher. Noidoi, since they have this, since Noidoi are made out of leather, they don't absorb so fast. That would be the difference, which means every kankan would need to be kashered. And the Gemara today is going to discuss how you kasher. But Tosha says there's other people who argue, and they say that what's specific about the noid is there's no such thing as the cheres that is going to be by Leah more than the noid. They're both the same, and the reason why you're allowed to use them is because if the guy only kept the wine in it for a short period of time, or his intent when he put the wine in is only to put the wine in there for a short period of time, not to store it for an extended period, there it will not ask for the keli at all. That's what we're talking about. So therefore, he learned that a noid and a kankan, it's not the derech to store wine there long term. It's only made to keep wine there for short term. Not quite clear what that short term is, and therefore you'd be allowed to use it. Now that makes a huge nafkamina lalacha, because this is where Tosfos takes it to the next level, and he says, "Well, Fishitas Rabbeinu Tam." So he brought down from a different Baal Tosfos, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Baruch, I think. Let me just look at the Baal Tosfos who he quotes from, who says this chiluk of Rabbi Eliyahu ben Rabbi Yehuda. He's the one who said that noidus and kankanim, all that determines whether or not the Yid allowed to use them is if it's machnis on the keel. Is it the derech to use them for a long time? If it's the derech to use them for a long time, even if there's only a little bit of wine in it, even if it was only used once by a guy, we answer it with the rabbanon because it's the derech to use for a long time. But if it's the derech to use for a short time, it wouldn't be a problem. The only problem that Rabbeinu Tam has on it is that the Gemara, the halachas gedolos seems to make a distinction, and he says that noidos you don't normally store wine in it for a very long time, but kankanim you do. So the halach that Rabbi Eliyahu took to say that we can say kankanim and noidos are the same has nothing to do with what absorbs more and what absorbs less. Like Rashi says, it's all totally, and what it's used for, we'll say they're both designed to be used for short term. But the Rebbeinu Tam asks that it seems like kankanim are made to store wine in short time. So where will they be a nafkamina? The nafkamina will be by certain kalim that had zephas in them, but they were only designed to be used short term. According to Rabbi Eliyahu ben Rabbi Yehuda, if it has zephas in it, but it's only designed to be used short term, you would not have to kasher it. You'd be able to use it from a guy. And they had different cups and saucers that were used in those days that they refer to, I don't know what these things are, but they refer to as knash and vishtat, which were like kalim. To me, it sounds almost like a tea set where you would serve someone to drink in these cups. It seems from the sifta like that's what it is, but it had zephas in it. So according to Rashi, these for sure would be problematic. You'd have to kasher them, because once it has zephas in it, it absorbs. And the question is all about how absorbent it is. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's totally in if it's designed to be there for a long time. But Rabbi Tam didn't like Rabbi Yehuda's shop because he holds kankanim are considered things are left there for a long time. So based on that, there's going to be a discussion as to whether or not you can use these cups from goyim. So Tosfos Firzois that the meaning is shenahagu b'chol mekoymos liknos chadashim min ha'ovdik. People will buy these types of kalim from goyim, even though they have zephas in them. And we don't find that we kasher them. So why would we do that if, according to Rabbi Yehuda, where it's only totally in how long wine is placed there for. Okay, there you could be makel. But everybody else held that you also have to look at the absorbent qualities. And since it has zefes, it should be a problem. But Lamaisa, the Welt buys them. Why? The dafka be yemeim show you regil lahakel ben yain b'shas fisa yesh lesser. Maybe there, you know why it's usher? Is because while they were smearing it, we said they would pour wine into it at that time, because the wine, I guess, makes it, the first wine that you pour into the zephyrs, while it's warm, makes it that it shouldn't put a bad taste into future wine that you put into it. Then the hidi yain b'shas fisa, the preachers, like the Gemara said, by noidos, yesh lochush shema achrekein hitel shom yain v'lo yidia. We need to be concerned that maybe the goy put more wine into it later on. That was in those days. Ata nowadays, she'enon regil nahatel b'miyayim b'shas visa. Now the minig is the goyim don't use wine as the final finish to pour into the zephes. They don't do that anymore. It's not the manufacturing process. Therefore, im noten bahem yain achas visa hoyenikr, you would be able to tell. You would be able to tell that something's up over here, and therefore you wouldn't use it. If we have our own kalim that had wine in it, and the guy touched it, that for sure will be usher, because we know for sure the guy touched the wine in it. So there's a whole discussion at the end of the day about kalim that have zephyrs on them, if there is a concern that they have to be kafir or not. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. I just find these toisus and fascinating, even though I don't understand exactly what the Matthias is, because we do things differently, but it's funny how they would have to analyze the process he's done then, and how it would impact whether or not we'd have to be considered to kasher. Okay, so now we're going to deal with what happens if something does need to be kasher. So Zok to Gemara. I'm sorry, it's weiter. Bar Adi, which is the name of an Arab merchant, Taya, the Bar Adi, the Arab merchant, Onas Hanuziki Meirab Yitzchak Bar Yosef. He stole these jugs that belong to. He stole these jugs that belong to Yitzchak Bar Yosef, and I guess he had to move wine around. Rama B'hu Chamra, he used it to move his wine, to store his wine temporarily, and then V'hadrin Nehele, and then he gave him back. So now Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef has kalim that have been contaminated with stam yayin when the guy used it. So he didn't know what to do. Can he use these jugs? Also, Shaul Bey Midrash. He came to ask in the Bis Medrash, may he or may he not use these jugs? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Kach Hoyre Rabbi Ami Halacha L'Maisa. This is what Rabbi Ami taught us, how you kasher these jugs. Malin Mayim Shloisha Yavim. You fill them up with water for 3 days, Uma'arin, and you rinse them out. The Amarava Tzarech La'arin Me'es Leis. Meaning 3 days in a row, you have to leave water in these kalim for 24 hours. Empty out the water every 24 hours and put in fresh water. If you do this 3 times, it will extract any of the tam of the wine that's also. I'm sorry? So even if you know Chainesach, because we're discussing kashering, it doesn't matter what was in there. How do you get it out? So the way you get it out is 3 times for 24 hours. You leave water in, and that will absorb whatever it has to absorb. Savar mina. So when he heard that psak, he thought Hanamila Didan. This was only a kula because it wasn't jugs that belonged to the goy for years, and it was so angezapped with isur. It was really Jewish kalim that the goy had for a couple of days, and during those couple of days he contaminated. That's what this process would work for. Aval the two. But if you wanted to buy a real treifin keli from the goy that housed the ayin nesach for years and years and years, loy, that's too much, and that this iru process wouldn't be effective for. But ki also Rav and Amar Shimon ben Lakish, echad shalonu ve'echad shalahem. This is a bona fide, thorough Hagala process that will pull any blias out. Server Rab Acha Barei Rava Kamed Rav Ashi Lemeimar. In front of Rav Ashi, Rav Acha suggested that maybe Hanamili Noidos, maybe that would only work by noidos which are leather, which you can extract all the blias from. Abel Kankanim, which are made out of cheres, loy, this process wouldn't work. Amalei Rav Ashi, loishna noidos, v'loishna kankanim, this process works well to extract any blias.
What did it do?
You put water into the keli with water. You leave it there for 24 hours. You spill the water out. You push fresh water, and you repeat it a total of 3 times. You repeat it twice. You do it once, and you repeat it twice. Tanu Rabbanim, kankanim shaloy t'kachavim chadashim, grudim. So this is a similar case to what we had just earlier by the noidos. Now we're discussing it with kankanim, mutarin, yishanim, and musafafim asurim. This is where Rabbeinu Tam asked on Rashi. You see, they're the same. How could you make the distinction that kankanim automatically absorb? If a guy put wine into it, and now it has blias of wine, depending on how you learn the Friedrich Sugya, that Tosfos would determine how you learn this. Either and therefore it's contaminated, it has blias in it. Yisrael noisel seichem mayim. The Yid can put water into it to kasher it. If the guy put wine into it, there's another way to kasher it that doesn't require 3 full days. And what is that? Yisrael noisel seichem tzayer umurais v'nechoshish. Tzir is some type of juice that comes out of a fish. Murais is the kishkes of the fish that you mix with some type of flour and oil to make some meichel out of. You put that into the wine barrel, it solves your problem. If you make schmaltz herring in the wine barrel, you won't taste any more wine. You have nothing to worry about anymore. As Rashi says, Lefish yatzir umurais sarfenis hayayin and nivlo machal noisem. The power of these chemicals will destroy any taste of wine in there. I have to assume schmaltz herring will do the same thing. Zogt Gemara. So the Gemara is a shaila trading on Talmud base. Lichatchila or diavad. That means, could you lichatchila put sir and murais into these barrels and use that sir? Or it's saying if you shouldn't do that, but if you did it, diavad, it'll be cut. Toshma. The Tani Rab Zvid bar oishia halakech kankanim min oivdei kechafim chadoshim if they're new noisin l'seichen yayin yishonim if the guy used it for wine noisnim. I'm sorry, Chadoshim Noisnu Seichen Yayin. If they're brand new, then you could even put wine into them if you know for sure they were not used. But Yishonim, if they were used already, meaning they're already absorbed with Yayin Nesach, and now these are Isur, you have the Isur I know in them, Noisnu Seichen Sir, Umor is Lachatchila. Lachatchila, you got to buy them and put Sir and Murais into them, which will kasher them, so you see it to Lachatchila the commandment. Boy, we know Rabbi Yehuda Nisiya Merab Ami. Hachaziran hechziran lekiv shonaish. You have something that's treif, and you took the cheres and you put it back into a kivshon, and you literally reforge it. It's heated to the highest level of heat. V'nislabnu, they became white. Ma what halacha? Omerlei tzir soireif or like kol shekain. If tzir could burn up and destroy any taste of yayin nesach in these klicheres, surely fire should accomplish the same thing. Where are they smeared? They're smeared on the inside. If you put them into an oven and they become so hot that the zephes melts off of them, that means it's hot enough, and therefore this keli is now kosher. Therefore, mutar. Amar Bashi, loy tema adenosran. You don't need it to wax, or the zephyr should completely dissolve and fall off. Elafilu rafoy mirpa. Even if it just gets soft, that's a clear sign that the keli is so hot that the wax on it is starting to, the zephyr on it is starting to dissolve. Avagav l'leinosa, even if it didn't actually fall off. What about kinsa? What if you didn't put it into an oven? but rather you took the keli not in an oven, you put fuel inside it, and you lit a fire inside the keli, and it got so hot inside the keli that it melted the wax that's inside the keli. There pligabar avachavar vina chad osar, because the whole keli is not hot. Just the inside is hot. If you heat up the inside, of course, the wax on the inside is going to melt. We need to know that the walls of the keli are so hot that they're melting the wax. So if you're heating it in the kitchen from the outside, then the walls became so hot. But another one holds its mutter because the Lamaisa, it got hot enough inside the keli to melt the wax. The hilchos command the osar, we ask, Ibailu, ma'alit l'toichai sheichor. You have a jug that had blias of yain nesach in it. Are you allowed to put beer into it? Why should beer be mutter? So Rashi says beer would be mutter because beer would be mevatel the tam of wine, similar to sir and rice. Or is there a gzeira that even though yes it is mevatel the tam, but we don't want to let you use beer, because if we let you use beer, you might by mistake once also put wine in there. So Gemara of Nachman Reb Yehuda Asri, they answered for Rav Ashari. Ravina Sharalei, Ravchia Bered Rab Yitzchak, Lemimba Beishicha. Ravina was once Mekel and let Ravchia Bered Rab Yitzchak put beer into this jug that housed wine. We know what happened. He made a mistake. Also, Rabban Bechamra. So you see, there's a valid reason for Rab Nachman and Rab Yehuda Pli Geyser, no beer out to wine, because you see it actually happened. But he didn't change his psak. We don't really got to be choshish that this is going to happen on a regular basis, that if we allow beer, someone's going to put in wine. That was a one-off story. We don't need to be worried about. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna, Havelei, Hanu Monei, the Pekusna. He had kalim that were made out of Pekusna, and Rashi tells us that Pekusna are Tzvi Bakar, made out of glolim, made out of feces of animals. He had kalim made out of that. Melinu Maya, and they became contaminated with yayin nesach, and he had to kasher them. How did he kasher them? Melinu Maya, he did this same process where you leave it with water for 24 hours 3 times, but he did something extra that was not asked of him. And chinu b'shimsha, he put them in the sun to get heated up. Haku, they burst. In other words, he lost these kalim, they got destroyed. Amalei Rababa, you on your own made it that these kalim should be ushered to you forever, not literally usher, but now you can't use them anymore because you destroyed them. Maya, what did they say? How to kasher it? Fill it with water 3 days in a row. But anucha b'shimsha miyamar, no one told you to have to put it in the sun. So you are more machmer because you prevented yourself from ever using these kalim because you put it into the sun. Amr Rabbi Yosna, Amr Rabbi Ami, Klei Neser. Neser is, told you there's 3 types of Neser. One Neser is used for soap, but it's some type of soft, flat type of kalim. Rashi's there, kehos. Kehos means weak. So there's some type of keli. Ein loy tahara ilamas. You can never ever kasher them. My Klei Neser, Amr Rabbi Yosy bar Avin, Klei machfire shel trif. It comes from the earth that you would normally plant. Driffen, it's alum. Alum is some type of substance. I don't know exactly what it is, but that can't be kashered because it's too weak and it's gonna break apart if you do what you need to do. Klei machpores shel trif. I'm sorry. The vei parzik Rufila. Parzik Rufila. Parzik was his name. Rufila was his position. He was the Sheni Lamelech. He was a tough guy. Onas Hani Kubi Mipumadisa. He went and just took jugs from Yidin and Pumadisa, and he didn't care. And Ramavu Chamer, he also put Yain Nesach into it. And then it's written in the Halayu. And now the question is, what do we do with our dishes? Also, Shalul Rabbi Yehuda, they asked Rabbi Yehuda what to do. Omar, he told them, Davar Shein Machnisa Lakimu, since these jugs are things that you don't normally leave wine in it for a long time, therefore, it's never by Leah, and mishachshichan b'mayim vein mutar. Just rinse them out with water once, and they'll be fine. Amar Bavira, hani chatzvi shchimi de'armoi. Chatzvi shchimi de'armoi, or you're buying goyisha kalim. Rashi shchimi means they're made from karka shachmumis. It's some type of material that used to make kalim out of, the loibali tuma, I'm sorry, red pitchers, they don't absorb a lot. They don't absorb. They're not absorbent. So again, meshachshem b'mayim mutar. You could just rinse them once with water and it'll be allowed. Amar papi, hani pasvosa deve michsi. Rashi says that sometimes there are klei cheres from michsi where the cheres is very hard and it doesn't absorb much. It doesn't absorb much. Ishasav gechavim pamrishain kula amala pliyidaser. If the very first time, and this is Rashi's shot, not Tosh's, but if the very first time that they were used, a guy used them, which means they were fresh, ready to absorb, thirsty like a sponge, and the guy used them, so now for sure they're usher because there's ayin nesach inside them. Keep ligi the machlokes is bepam sheni. If the first time it was used with kosher wine, so the walls of the keli already absorb kosher wine. How much capacity does it have to absorb more wine if a guy only used it the second time? Or ikadami parmishan v'sheni kulam pligi aser. For sure, it will absorb it. It'll be aser. He pligi b'pam gimel. V'hilchazah. What do we paskin? Parmishan aser because they're still absorbent and they would have absorbed some of the yain nesach. But the third time, if it was used twice with kosher wine, and only the third time it was used with yain nesach mutter, because they're not going to absorb much, you could just rinse them out. We know even if it's not mutter, we know how to fix it by doing the iroi with water for 24 hours, 3 times in a row. This is discussing if you don't need kashering at all. Haimani the kunya chayura. Haimani the kunya. The kalim that are made out of kunya, talking about a lead kalim or kalim that were covered with lead. Rashi's kunya is that you covered over with lead. So the chayura of ukma, if it's made of white or black, shori, because that doesn't absorb much, Isser, but Yeroika, the green type, Aser Mishum the Mitzvah. That will absorb a lot of blias. Whereas it's made from karka, from the chafura shultrif, and those happen to be very absorbent. The isbu kartufni, but if there's any cracks or crevices in it, then kuli asiri, it doesn't matter what color they are, those will for sure absorb. Dorsh meremar. Kunya, again, the same type of keli. Beinuchma ben chiyura beyurka shari. So he argues on what Reb Zvid said. He held even green will be mutter. But by chametz, it's not mutter. So why would meremar be makel by yayin esach more than were makel by chametz? They asked meremar himself, what is halacha? Can you use it on Pesach? And you know what he answered? There's no question you're not allowed to use. The mitzvah for you, Bali, they'll be beloya. Vasiri and they'll be osir. The shayla is by chiyur v'ukmi, my. So you see right away that Merema himself said, Lagabe Pesach, he can't use the green. So why Lagabe Yayin Nesach can you use the green? And you don't need to be worried that it's going to be beloya. Zok Gemara, he's the Bikatufni, moving along with the shayla bat chametz. If these kalim had cracks and crevices, those will be also, you can't use them on Pesach. They're nice and smooth. Do we say they're not boileya because they're lined with this lead, and therefore you can use them on Pesach? My bobi alacha amalu. He told them the answer is simple. Ana chazina lahu the medaisi. I saw that when you fill these kalim, sometimes even though you pour the liquid on the inside, you see leakage on the outside. So clearly, it's penetrating the liquid. The contents are penetrating through the scaling. They will be usher. And once they're by my timer, once klicheres absorbs, no method of kashering will be able to fully extract them. So, for example, the darsh lahu meremar puli money the kunyashari. Why was he mekel by yayin nesach, yet he was machmer by Pesach with these same kalim? And if you're going to tell me that chametz is deraisa and yayin nesach is only derabbanon, so that's how he was mekel. But called the tikkun derabbanon came deraisa tikkun. Whenever they make a takana, they would treat it like an issue deraisa. The Gemara, the answer is simple. this shalabat chametz were kelim that you use for hot things that absorbs more. That's where Merima said that we have a concern. Zeta shmisha b'tzoinin, but yain esach is only used with cold products. If it's only used with cold products, there we don't need to be concerned that they will absorb. Okay, we'll stop here, Hashem, and we will tomorrow.